Hey, welcome to Versus. I'm Alan Ing, editor-in-chief of Film Threat, and today we've got a great topic for today. A bunch of guests to duke it out. Is Hollywood dying? Some would say it is. Some would say maybe it's on life support. But we're going to find out. We're going to come. Yeah, let's do this. Yeah. All right. Hey, want to thank my panel of guests here. This is Film Threat Versus. Just right off the top of the bat, before we introduce everybody. Okay, I don't know why this thing. Lord Thoth tells us once again to like, share, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, sign up as a member, and join the Discord and Rumble as well. Hit the follow and like there. Is Hollywood dead? We've got a great panel of guests here. A few on their way. Let's take a moment. We'll go around the horn, introduce yourselves, and kind of give us a scale. Is Hollywood live and thriving, or is it on life support? We'll start with you, Baggage Claim.
Hi, I'm Baggage Claim. Thanks so much for having me on. And I think Hollywood is at a 2, very close to life support.
All right, Derek, go for it.
Yo, what's up, everybody? Derek Anderson, the DA. Is life support really what we're talking about, or is Hollywood already dead and we just don't know it yet? This is a really good topic. Let's talk about it.
All right, Matt, you're up.
Yes, I'm coming for you, script doctor. So I hope you're ready to, throw down today. I'm Matthew Kadish, the producer of the Salty Nerd podcast, saltynerdvideo.com. Go check us out. I think Hollywood's fine. It's just being run by a bunch of idiots. And the minute you get those idiots out of positions of power, it's going to go right back to where it was.
All right, Ben's fighting words, script doctor.
Well, there's no better opponent to have than Matthew Kadish, but I'm in complete agreement with him. At best, Hollywood is in rehab right now. All they have to do is purge this parasite and purge the abusive addictions that have plagued it for the last 2 decades, and they'll go back to working order where, again, 90% of the movies will suck, but they will suck for the right reasons, and the 10% that shine will shine for the right reasons.
All right, and lastly, Christian.
Hey, I'm Christian Toto of HollywoodInToto.com. And Hollywood has spent about 10 or so years basically alienating half the country. Now it's biting them on the butt. And there's so much change going on in the industry. And if they're not going to be ready to roll with the punches, they're in trouble.
All right. Well, hey, let's get into some of the numbers here. I'll bring it up. But we are looking at the box office for this past weekend. Mm-hmm. And for some reason, my computer is running very slowly. But here we go. Number one is Challengers. We reviewed it. Very interesting movie, earning $15 million at the box office. Unsung Heroes from Lionsgate. That's a faith-based movie, making about half of that at $7.75 million. And then from there, Godzilla at 7.2, Civil War 7 million, and Abigail at 5.2 million. So the big question here is, is this kind of normal for this time of the year, or are we seeing that slow decline? What is up with this week's box office?
Well, we're going into the summer season, so of course they dump as much into April as they can to get it off their plates for the bigger movies. I just want to say about Challengers, though, there's a reason why they delayed Dune 2, so that after the actors' strike, Zendaya could post to her 60 million Instagram followers to get them into the movie seats. And I think that 15 million right there is a direct result of her social media presence and her star power bringing people to the theaters. Otherwise, nobody would be seeing that movie.
Yes, she's become such a fashion icon too. On top of it, her entire approach to the press for every movie that she does it very thematically. She and her stylist put a lot of thought into every single dress and matching the theme of the movie. And I think it's become a bit of a spectator sport for a lot of her fans. That what is she going to unveil this time?
One of the things that maybe we haven't talked about yet, or we will, is that a movie from 1979 nearly cracked the top 10. They put out Alien one more time, and I'm really kind of angry I missed it in theaters because it's such a great experience. But the fact that it could compete with all these other releases, even though we've seen it dozens of times, at least we should have all seen it dozens of times, I think it just shows how weak the market is right now. And by the way, that Challengers number isn't that great. I mean, good for her for going into promotion mode, but Zendaya is like every other star. She really can't guarantee big box office. 15 million is okay, but didn't have a lot of competition. Nothing quite like it in theaters. I don't think that's a number to crow about.
Mm-hmm. Do you think it was the movie that hindered it, or do you honestly think it was Zendaya that hindered the movie?
I don't think it's her fault.
Subject matter was, yeah. I mean, I think the subject matter of Challengers had a lot to do with the. At the same time, I think 15 million is somewhat respectable for a movie like this.
Well, you know, first of all, the title is terrible. Let's go there.
Oh, we're crossing over. So
sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just saying, Challengers is an artistic film. It's not supposed to be a big box office draw. You're supposed to have like a 50 million opening for something like this. It's really just a woman that plays both sides for her own entertainment, essentially. Done in the veil of tennis, which apparently doesn't have a whole lot of tennis in it. But I mean, some of the things that I saw about it, I thought, oh, these are actually very interesting direction and writing choices. But this is not a movie for a broad audience. But this is what the first quarter of the year usually is. You're supposed to kind of dump sort of the artistic, the risque, some of the horror, some of the stuff that in your focus groups have not performed as well. This is the quarter where you dump it out to prep for the summer movie release. However, I think audiences are a little averse to theaters to a degree because the studio that has dominated them over the last 7 to 8 years has now tainted that very market over the last 3 to 4, to the point where if they're going to spend the money, which has less spending power than it did 5 years ago, they're not going to waste it on something that doesn't have at least a little bit of a word of mouth cred to it.
I also want to point out that Challengers, the entire marketing campaign for Challengers was based around Zendaya getting into a devil's threesome. So,
yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I didn't think Challengers was going to do amazing numbers. You know, it didn't seem like it was that kind of film. It seemed like it was more something, like a vehicle for Zendaya to kind of get out there and be the star of her own movie, but not necessarily something that was just going to pack butts and seats in the box office. So I'm not surprised by the numbers there. April has lately, maybe not traditionally, but at least in the last decade or so, has been more of a pre-summer gear up. We've seen a lot of the Avengers movies dropping during April. I think that's when like Marvel's kind of used this time frame. Last year was Mario Brothers, I believe, or it wasn't. Yeah, Mario Brothers came out last year around the same time. So we've been getting some bigger releases in April. It's kind of like pre-summer, getting before we start getting into May and June. So I'm surprised that April has been such a down month. And there's been some decent, releases, Godzilla Kong but that came in March. And then you have Civil War. Civil War didn't really do, like it's not a box office, type of film either. So I don't know when the box office hits are supposed to arrive for this year. It just doesn't seem like there's a lot of them left. I know Planet of the Apes is coming out next week. It's covering maybe next month. And it's, I think there's a few films that are coming out, but nothing just seems to resonate with the general audience. And I think that's the big problem that Hollywood has right now, is that nothing's clicking with the general audience, at least this year. And last year, we saw a lot of the content that came out and all of these failures from 2023. It was just a dumpster fire. You're talking about Indiana Jones, a big IP failure. Little Mermaid didn't do very well in the box office. Two Marvel movies absolutely flopped in the box office last year. So it's very interesting to see, like, where are the audiences going to for their blockbuster entertainment?
Well, that's the other part for the course, is that April's not really the pre-summer. March is the pre-summer. It starts around March break. And that's because the kids got that 1 week off of school. That's where they go. That's where they kind of do the pre-summer. You have a 6-week period. Traditionally, before we started condensing the big tentpole films into that pre-summer area of the blockbuster, summer started like literally the first day of June. Like that was your summer box office take. That's where your summer movies start, because kids were out of school. That's where they would go to during the weekdays, what have you, if they weren't going to camp or anything. But the whole field has changed dramatically when internet started blowing up, when people actually realized, we can watch things whenever we want. When piracy became a far greater, easier means to distribute film and television around, everything was just like, how do we game the system? And when Marvel started introducing stuff prior to the summer, they did that primarily just because their brand was so big. They knew that they released it before the summer competition, they'd actually own that quarter, and that would give them way more money way sooner. They've actually destroyed their their credibility in that because they put out flops after flop. But we've also seen a shift because now Disney is less than 2% of the box office total for this first quarter. It is being dominated by Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers technically dominated the box office last year, even though it did have several Detective Comics flops. But Barbie and Dune, Barbie really did save it. Wonka did some considerable numbers as well. And then the start of this year, you have Godzilla X Con and Dune. These are good moments for them because I'd rather have a studio like Warner Brothers, which cares more about making money than an ideologically driven studio that's had the same head for over 15 years, driving this industry in the ground and putting Hollywood into the position that we are currently talking about right now.
Sorry, my internet's crapping right now.
Oh no, Alan.
If you guys can, yeah, okay. I don't know if you can hear me right now, but I'm trying to get an understanding in terms of the topic. Is Hollywood dying? Sorry, am I crapping out?
Nope, you're good now.
Oh, you sound great.
Okay,
you're good.
If going to the topic of is Hollywood?
Okay, now he crapped out.
Now we don't know what he's going to say. Is Hollywood
different angles? One is okay. So is Hollywood dying? I want to go at for two angles, but is it because the money's not there from the audience standpoint, or is it strictly the quality of movies?
Alan, you
I
can
think-
tell that Hollywood's dying because of the stability of your internet connection.
Yeah,
It's like Hollywood's just given up on internet.
I
Everyone's
know.
streaming.
But I want to piggyback off of what DA was saying, that there's no connection to the audience, right? A movie like Challenger should interest potentially someone like me. I really enjoy Zendaya in a lot of the roles that she's been in, and she's a beautiful girl. Again, I spectator sport, her fashion, but I had no interest in going for a movie like Challenger. It's just too far and wide out from what feels like the normal female human experience for me to be pulled into a story like that. And I just would like to see that. I would like to see movies that just speak to me on a human level. And what's going to be interesting is in the next couple months, what's going to dominate is going to be a 25-year-old movie or 20-plus-year-old movie, which is the Lord of the Rings returning to the movies. And I'm excited for that. I love that now. This is the perfect show of how much Hollywood has fallen, that not only are audiences on streaming services switching to old catalogs, but it's also the movie theaters themselves switching to old catalogs. They're re-releasing all these movies from 20, 30, 40 years ago because they know that has more power than anything coming out today. Sorry for the noise.
Well, I'd actually argue that the reason that the re-releases are being pushed so much is because theaters are trying desperately to get people to return. You know, there was this great article in Variety where they interviewed the Russo brothers, and of course the Russo brothers, you know, they presided over Endgame and Infinity War, but their take on it, and I think this is a take that's shared by a lot of people in the industry in Hollywood, is that people are changing how they consume content. People have shorter attention spans. Streaming has been extremely disruptive. There was, before the pandemic, there was this system in place, right, where you had a theatrical release, and then, you know, after 6 months or so, it came to like home video and streaming and stuff like that. And there was, you know, the physical media market, and after, you know, the pandemic, all that went out the window. Like the original proven and tested business model for Hollywood was completely disrupted. And now people are still trying to figure out, okay, what are we doing now? Because theaters are still on the ropes. You know, streaming has proven to be a huge money pit. And what they're saying is that because cell phones are a thing with like the kids who have like a two-minute attention span, nobody's actually tuning into their content in a way that's profitable or a way that people actually can enjoy it. And that's why there's all these critics on YouTube and stuff like that. And it's typical Hollywood bubbleism, where basically like they're so far removed from the average moviegoer that they really don't understand what's going on here. And the theaters, in order to survive, are bringing back, you know, Lord of the Rings and Alien and all these other movies to get people back in the theaters, because Hollywood still hasn't committed to going back to the original, okay, we're doing a wide theater release and then we're going to streaming. They're still trying to figure out, okay, is there a way where we can salvage all the money that we pumped into streaming by offering even more exclusives and day and date releases, or, you know, like whatever the case may be. And so what you basically have is you have and Jerry Seinfeld even talked about this in his interview with I think it was Hollywood Reporter or Variety or something like that, and where he basically said nobody knows anything about what they're doing. They're like completely disrupted there in Hollywood, and so nobody knows what the strategy is going forward. And you have yet to have someone in a leadership position step up and say industry wide, it's like, hey, this is what we as an industry are going to do in order to survive and be profitable. Everyone's just kind of chasing their own tail, and nobody knows what anyone is doing. And so you have this situation where theater owners are being forced to, go back to these retro movies and to get people to actually like come to the theaters. And you also have Hollywood who's just like, well, we're still on the hook for producing content for these streaming services, which means that the theatrical model is still not part of their overall plan. So until smart people get into positions of leadership and power in Hollywood once again, and you could argue that was never the case, but at least semi-competent people getting into positions of leadership in Hollywood, you're going to continue to see a steep decline, especially if they continue pumping ideological propaganda into what's supposed to be escapist entertainment.
Well, let me ask you this.
I would say it's not necessarily escapist, because escapist entertainment is designed to make audiences into drones, where they're not ever going to take inspiration or aspiration from the stories that are being told, because that's basically what it is. If they condition you to the point where after a hard day's work, you come in, you're like, I just want to turn off my brain and watch something on TV, that's bad, because that doesn't enrich you. And that's part of the what problem that got us here, is that we had a whole gap of writers be pulled into this industry that were unable to compete with everything else around them that was vying for the attention of audiences. With Russo brothers are not wrong in the sense that, yes, the way that kids and young people consume media now is vastly different. It's been corrupted by big tech. But here's the other part. There are probably good 10,000 writers, directors out there right now that have been trying to break in, but have had walls put up against them for immutable differences that don't align with the current ideology, which means that the competition that is needed in order to beat TikTok, beat YouTube, beat Instagram, Facebook, all those things, is being pushed aside, because the people that have actually gotten into power, the people that don't know really anything about movie making, they may know business, they may know statistics, but they don't understand the concept of marketing. They don't understand the concept of imagination, inspiration, aspiration, and most importantly, role models, which is something that I've been pitching in Hollywood since 2006. And every time it gets denied, because nobody in positions of power want to tell stories about role models, because they want all their characters to have the same flaws and difficulties that they have. And we've seen 15, almost 20 years of that, and how it has had a detrimental effect on the culture itself. So yes, Kadish is absolutely right. We have a lot of incompetent people out there who have the education that allows them to be quote unquote qualified, but they don't actually have the knowledge or experience. And those that do have either retired, died, or are being literally ostracized by those in power that don't know what they're doing, because they don't want to lose the power that they have right now.
Yeah. I think we're all kind of hitting on important issues. And I think the big picture is that it's not one of these things, it's all of these things. And I think you're absolutely right. I also think that Hollywood has to get more nimble, more creative, and also cut costs. We started talking about challengers. And one of the reasons why I was down on the film from a marketing point of view is that it costs 50 to 55 million. So even if it does reasonably well for an art house style film, it may struggle to gain profitability. Hollywood has got to cut costs. Some of our friends in this space, like The Critical Drinker, more people are going to watch his videos than they're going to watch some of the stuff that's streaming right now. And his price point is so low compared to what they're making. So Hollywood's got to wise up. They've got to get more business savvy, and they definitely have to reach out to audiences. I mean, there should be people reaching out to Film Threat saying, "Hey, I'm an executive at Studio, XYZ. Can I be on your show? I want to talk to your host. I want to, have a good conversation. I want to learn what you guys and gals are talking about." I think that kind of outreach would certainly be helpful. But someone mentioned before the bubble mentality. It is bulletproof. It is 6 inches thick, and they're not listening. They're not really learning. So, is Hollywood dying? Technically, no, but they're on their way.
I would say this. I would say bad Hollywood is kind of dying, because we had something that has never happened before in this industry, and that came surprisingly from the WGA's minimum basic agreement. And what ended up happening is that they instituted Essentially, there was an honor system when it came to TV writing, which is that this is how many writers you need to do a season between 13 and 22 episodes. This is our pilot season stuff. They kind of peppered those into the minimum base agreement, but they also included something that we've never seen before, which is a performance-based residual. Now, this may seem like just kind of a greedy grab, but if you'd actually take a look at it, it's literally a merit-based rating system incorporated into the NBA, which means that if you want a successful show, if you want a show that makes money, we are going to reward you for it, which means that all the ideological pushes to staff people that are not qualified for the show are going to be rejected because the people operating the show are like, well, we want to make sure this show makes money. In order to do that, we need to have the best in the business, not people that fit a certain immutable difference that claims to be unrepresented or a minority of sorts. And I'm air quoting minorities because, again, anyone that wants to get into the entertainment business is kind of crazy and a minority of its own area. But regardless of that fact, you have literally a standard put in place, meaning like, yes, you can force us to put those in there, but the show is going to get canceled because it's not going to make the residuals it needs. It's not going to be able to pay for itself. And you're just going to be going through turnover and turnover. And we're going to see that for the next at least 18 months of shows coming and going. But at the same time, we're also going to see something that's very much needed in Hollywood, which is a cutback in the oversaturation of the television market. Because over the last 10 years, every so many seasons that have passed, we have doubled the amount of shows produced, getting up to the point of 600 original programs being produced by the end of 2022, mid-2023 season. That's so much that no audience would be able to actually discern and find the thing that they would like to watch. You've literally oversaturated the competition so much that you've split your market down to the point where you'd never be able to sustain it. So now Hollywood is learning, oh, we actually can't just be pumping out content to fill the streamers and the networks and every other avenue. We actually have to start being a bit more selective. We also have to start going back to the pilot season model, where instead of spending an entire season for 10 episodes and then dropping it week by week or all at once on a streaming service, we should be testing the pilot, see if it's actually got potential, and then order your next 11. And if that does well, you order your back 9. That model worked. And the NBA actually kind of geared towards that, surprisingly so. And yes, it's going to hurt a lot of writers, but we've already seen in the Hollywood Reporter, the only writers it's hurting are the ones that use the I'm lesbian, I'm black, I'm a woman to get a show. And those are not important when it comes to writing good television or film. They're not.
And the flip side of that on the movie industry is that Hollywood isn't doing mid-budget or low-budget movies anymore. It's always $100 million plus or bust,
Exactly.
right? So like, you know, you're kind of squeezing out a lot of the incubator movies that, you know, develop new talent, to, you know, create new stars, create new directors, give new writers a chance to shine, and basically, you know, and when you get into that scenario where the only movies that are being made are 100 million plus, they're only hiring tested and proven like directors, they're only hiring tested and proven talent, and that leads to stagnation, you know, down the road.
I think Marvel's done the opposite of that because they've gone out and hired like very like rookie talent almost, you know, when you talk about some of the people that have made their most recent content, which is what I thought was kind of hilarious when you talk about that Variety article. I think the real issue with Marvel when they're talking about what the Russos are saying is the different mediums of content that you can consume, and everybody has a lot of choices, and you know there's this changing environment. He's right, there is a changing environment in terms of people consuming content differently, but the content in the first 3 phases of the Marvel Cinematic Universe was objectively better. And that's the real issue, is that they're not making the kind of content. They've gone deep into ideology, definitely in the last 2 phases. I think you just got to make good content. And I think that what Kevin Feige probably did, and just my opinion, he relied a lot on his formula. He said there was the Marvel formula, and he relied on that formula. And he said, well, I can grab, you know, somebody that's never done a superhero movie before, like a Nia DaCosta, throw her in there to do the Marvels, or what was the other lady? Chloe Zhao, because they have, you know, they won awards.
Like
okay, let's put them in.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing.
So, you know, instead of actually going out and getting like, you know, Jon Favreau, which he had in the first phase, Joe Johnston, which he had in the first phase.
Disney ruined the Jon Favreau part on Marvel, but that's another story. So what you're saying, what you're basically equating here is actually a really terrible aspect that Feige used. So Feige treated his MCU like a television show. And in television shows, TV directors, specifically like the Russos, are not really impactful in how television is directed. The crew is already there. They know what to do. The producers are there. The showrunners are there. They know what to do. Essentially, a TV director is no different than a person that directs traffic. Like, that is literally how impactful they are. David Nutter is probably the most valuable director, pilot director in the industry. but he's never been able to do a feature film that people actually notice about.
Yeah.
But he's
And
very good at doing what he's told.
Even with Joss Whedon, the studio would come in and basically like direct the movie, or at least like tell him like you need to do like this, and that. They took all the creative, decisions away from him.
Exactly.
So Marvel's really kind of like what do you call them? Like one of those mills where they just churn out product.
It's
and
a
it
Ford
doesn't matter
assembly line, essentially. Yeah.
It doesn't matter who you plug into that. And in fact, they prefer TV directors because they're easier to push around.
Exactly.
They just do what they're told.
And that's the detriment. And the same thing when they went for the rookie writers. Now, it's not enough that they got rookie writers. They got rookie writers that fit the ideology that Disney wanted. So that's different because there are rookie writers out there that I'm pretty sure could have blown a lot of people away on those projects and on those shows because they would have done something that the ones that we got didn't do. And that is take a creative risk that benefits, well, from their perspective, benefits the IP. And ideally from the perspective of the core audience and then the normies would get them involved. But again, Disney does not like that. They are very risk averse.
All right, let me.
That's the problem here. So sorry about that.
Let me interject here. And one thing, Baggage Club, did you want to add anything to this or?
All good. Sorry for getting.
no
now it was
problem.
my turn for my internet to go out.
All right, let's bring up that Jerry Seinfeld article. It did come out of Variety. Here we go. Look at him. There he is. Jerry Seinfeld is finally a movie director with the upcoming premiere of his feature Unfrosted, backed by Netflix. The star-studded comedy is a fictional account of the creation of Pop-Tarts. In a new interview with GQ magazine, it's GQ magazine, Seinfeld reflected on his experience jumping into movie making for the first time so late in his career. It was totally new to me. I thought I had done some cool stuff, but it was nothing like the way people. There's nothing like the way these people work, Seinfeld said. They're so dead serious. They don't have an idea that the movie business is over. They have no idea. As to elaborate, Seinfeld continued, a film doesn't occupy the pinnacle of a social cultural hierarchy that it did for most of our lives. When a movie came out, if it was good, we all went to see it. We all discussed it. We all quoted lines and scenes we liked. Now we're walking through a fire hose of water just trying to see. I think so. What, if anything, has replaced film? Depression, malaise, I would say confusion, disorientation replaced the movie business, he answered. Everyone I know in show business every day is going, what's going on? How do you do this? What are we supposed to do now? Question I have is, when did this happen? When did this first begin? Where was
2012?
Oh, was that
2012? That's when it first started happening. In 2012, the seeds for the ideology started taking form and started actually being verbally integrated into the content that we watch, as opposed to being done through subtext. So it was actually like right around that time. There's a couple of precedes that happened in 2009 or so, but in 2012, this was during the second presidential race where Obama won re-election. That kind of reaffirmed things, and that gave a lot of permission for people in Hollywood to kind of double down on the own ideology that they're pushing, because they were trying to argue the world is no longer racist because we have the first black president and he won 2 terms. So therefore we are away from that, which means we can now push in other ideas that would normally be rejected, where if we wanted to tell a story about a person of a particular ethnicity, race, or gender, or sexual expression, we could do that because they can point to the White House and see the people have already spoken. And that's kind of where the foundation built. But the other part is that we've also had this divide where we've had this talent gap of sorts occurring at the same time, where you get people from the independent market making movies, and when they start to they would then get their offers to do bigger budgets, and they would not be able to deliver. So they'd be chewed out a lot faster. So all the potential good filmmakers and writers that we would normally have gotten over that period were actually kind of accelerated through the system so fast that they ended up leaving or getting blacklisted altogether because they couldn't deliver. There's no grace period or stepping stone for them to actually rise up and better their skill set. And it just kind of snowballed effect over the years. And then, of course, when 2016 happened, that's where you have literally the world is told Hollywood that the last 4 to 8 years, everything they did was wrong. So instead of actually correcting it, they decide to double down harder and say, no, we have to fight back because we think those 8 years were right.
Yeah.
And so peak and escalation in that term.
Also script, when 2016 rolled around, what actually happened is you had a lot of Obama's, staffers people who worked in his administration who were expecting to, roll over into the Hillary Clinton administration.
Yep.
When that didn't happen, you saw a lot of them get jobs in Hollywood. And so basically you had the bureaucratic deep state that Obama had built over 8 years shift from DC to Hollywood. And that was really the impetus, that the catalyst of what we're seeing now, where basically all these ideologues got jobs in very high places through their government contacts in Hollywood. And that's one of the reasons Hollywood's in the position it is right now.
And a lot of them went to Netflix first because that was the dominating area. That replaced the blockbusters. That replaced the Walmarts and retail stores. Studios would dump a lot of the stuff that they didn't think would make them money at Netflix because they could sell it at a premium, make up those costs, and not have to worry about the secondary window markets of DVD network and cable, and then eventually streaming. But then to their own detriment there, instead of paying attention and identifying what Netflix actually was, they said, hey, instead of us just selling it to a third party and collecting the money, why don't we just build our own, sell it to ourselves? And then they completely forgot, well, if you sell something to yourself, you don't collect any money.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is a lot of bubble, like a lot of everything is circling around the same group of people, and they're not actually reaching out to the audiences, the people that support their content. They're not doing that. They're literally keeping everything within a bubble. Hey, hire the same people that agree with us ideologically. And then that's the people that are also, we're going to hire the directors and the writers that also agree with the ideology. We're going to plug them in. We're going to give them, allow them to skip ahead to the beginning of the class. And now you guys are going to be, the Hollywood voices going forward. And when you disconnect from your audience, when you have no connection to the, middle America, just regular, normal Joes that just go to the movies. Hey, I just want to go see a movie with my family. I'm not trying to listen to messages. I just want to go and watch a movie with my kids, with grandma, grandpa. That's what was so odd to me about what Disney did, because Disney is, like family. You think about Disney, you think about family movies, family entertainment, and they just completely disregarded that. And they've jumped, knee deep, elbow deep, waist deep into full ideological mode. And they've just absolutely wrecked their company because of it. I don't understand why they would do that. But when you talk about the bubble, when you talk about the people that they're hiring, when you're talking about everybody that's involved, now it makes sense, because it's like, oh, okay, you guys really don't care about the audience. All you care about is your message and your agenda, from a political slant, from a social slant. That's where everything has gone wrong. And until those people, as Script said, until those people are out of the business, it's just going to continue. It's just going to keep going the way it's going.
Well, they
and to add to that,
go ahead. Wrong people. Sorry, I'll let Maggie.
Just to add to that, I think the other catalyst as well was social media, and specifically the introduction of the like button, because that didn't exist. I believe the first introduction was in 2010. So that completely changed how people were even interacting with social media, where instead of it being about just sharing updates in your life with your friends, it now became more about gaining as much social clout as possible by saying the things that could gain you easy reputation points, right? And so if you push this lie that, America is a racist country, that became just the popular thing, especially with Obama as the president at that time, who himself was doing a lot of race baiting. And it just completely took over, where ideas otherwise that would be challenged, but because maybe they're fringe ideas, they're incorrect ideas that would get challenged by temperate voices around you. Now we're getting accelerated and really pushed out to the whole world, where all these clumps of people from around the globe were clinging together and just really doubling down on things that were just absolutely incorrect. So the idea, something even specific as America is a racist country, went from being something that you could argue pretty heavily against to now it's considered indisputable. America is a racist country. That's just regardless of how diverse it is, regardless of the fact that twice we elected a Black president. And I think Hollywood looked at these now newly elevated voices and said, oh, this is the voice that we can kowtow to, because look how loud they are, look how squeaky they are. And what DA was saying about that connection with middle America, it's really interesting, because a regular person is not sitting and constantly going online and complaining about something. They're not. That's not how they're looking at life. They're not even holding up protest signs and going and complaining at City Hall. They're just living their lives. They're finding a way that how whatever might be going wrong in their lives, they're just finding a way to work through it. So that's the voice that goes completely unheard. They're not squeaking at all. The only way they're heard is with their wallets, how they spend their money. And so it brings it back to that. It's that Disney is instead talking to an audience that's very loud, but not actually substantial. And what Seinfeld was saying, that this disorientation that's taken over Hollywood, I would take that a step further. That disorientation has taken over all of America. There's this overall question of who the hell are we? What the hell happened? Disney was the sanctum of American-based family values that actually spoke universally to a lot of people. But now it's completely deteriorated. We have no idea who we are. And every day we see something that's weirder and crazier and like further away from who we were. So we don't even know what to cling to. So I think that disorientation has really taken over culturally too.
Well,
Also,
let me
let me just say thank you to the 1,400 people watching us right now on Rumble and YouTube. We will get to your comments and chats. Christian, you had a comment?
Yeah, just go back to what Seinfeld said, because, you know, he's an observational comic. You don't get there unless you really are keen at looking at the culture and drawing some truths out of it. And what he's saying in part is, and I don't think we've kind of focused on this enough, is that, you know, movies don't really captivate us like they once did. I think Barbie was an exception. I think that really grabbed the zeitgeist. I didn't love it, but, you know, a lot of people did. So, I mean, I think that's part of it too. I've got 2 teenagers at home, and to get them to watch a movie, I mean, I've got to, you know, I've got to beg, borrow, and plead with them to kind of, hey, sit down for 2 hours with dad. It's just not their life. And, you know, it's certainly wildly anecdotal, but I get the sense from their friends as well that movies aren't the drivers of their social lives, that they don't really care as much. So, you know, it could be that no matter what Hollywood creates moving forward, that will be the case, that YouTube and other venues are far more appealing to them. And I think Hollywood has to realize that and start adjusting. I think a lot of it is that Hollywood, as liberal as it is, it's really conservative in its ability to change and grow. And that they can't be anymore. They're going to have to be nimble, because there's so many things they'll have to do differently moving forward. And that's why the Seinfeld pointed to the confusion. Nobody knows anything right now. They're all in flux. And I have a lot of sympathy for them, because everything is changing right now.
You look at the changing in the, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'll put it to you this way. So to DA's point, one of the reasons why it's changing, why the reasons there's so much lack of identity when it came to what Hollywood does and what's going on with America, is the fact that the studios, they don't actually pay attention to audiences on the detail levels. They delegate that to the talent, which would be your directors, your actors, and your writers. So if your directors and actors and writers are not paying attention to the audience, and they're not being able to feed the information to the people that would greenlight and pay for their product, they're actually not going to be getting made. And this all happened back when there was a big shift in the readership. So this would be story analysts that came straight out of university, went into Hollywood. They were ideologically driven, and what they did is they screened screenplays. So all the stuff that had the points of interest that they appreciated with, they would kick up to the next level. And the stuff that you and I and everybody else in the audience would actually go want to see in a movie would be tossed aside, because it was considered, you know, of the privileged class, of the typical thing. It didn't do anything, quote, new or exciting, and it didn't speak to a minority audience or an underrepresented group. And that data skewed the perspective of Hollywood studio execs, so that when they're getting all of these bad scripts that are like, well, why are people always talking about these subject matters? Is this what they want? Yes. Well, if this is what they want, then we will change our open writing assignments to fit that, but we'll get talented writers to write it. And even though they did get some talented writers to write it, the ideology and the perspective and the approach that they made to try and have the Hollywood formulas meet these new parameters didn't work with audiences. And so because they're in this huge conflict, at least up until recently, where they're like, well, if we're getting all this information that says audiences want this, but the audiences aren't showing up, even though we've got better writers and directors doing this stuff, what is wrong? And that's what's confusing them, because they didn't realize that they've been hoodwinked by a completely a generation that literally had no power at the very beginning that realized, oh, if we're the ones that are filtering through what actually gets to the studio heads to inform them of what's going on in the rest of the world, we get to manipulate the narrative. And even though we don't get the millions of dollars in pay a year, we at least can game the system so that we can actually rise up faster because we're the ones that understand what this narrative is. And that's what happened. And that's what's confused everybody.
I mean, speaking of brilliant writers, William Goldman, the legendary screenwriter, he famously said, in Hollywood, nobody knows anything. And there was actually a really wonderful article in the Hollywood Reporter to go off of what Jerry Seinfeld said this past weekend, where basically they talked about how studio executives are so out of the loop in terms of like how to run things that because they're scaling back on production and they don't know anything about the creative end of things, what they're doing is they're relying on a director's previous Rotten Tomatoes scores for the last movie they made
I saw that.
as a gauge as to whether or not to hire them. So if a director's movie was not fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, they're not getting hired, because that's the extent to which the studio executive knows anything about the craft.
And that's also what shows what's terrible about market research, because marketing departments have been unable to properly sell films for a very long time. The one thing that impressed me over the last 5 years was the stuff that they've done for Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. So they actually have guys on ape costumes on horses walking down Santa Monica Boulevard. I'm like, where were those 5, 6, 7 years ago? That's actually a good gimmick to actually get people to pay attention to your movie. We haven't had creative marketing like that in a very long time. And what we've had is what I've experienced the most, which is that I pitch a script to a studio exec. The marketing comes in and says, wow, that's a really cool idea, but we don't know how to sell this. To the point where I'm like, if you're in marketing and you don't know how to sell something, why are you in marketing?
They're so reliant on technology as well. It's like they don't connect to people like real people. Like Twitter, I always say Twitter's not real life. Twitter is not where you can find like actual real conversations happening. There's a lot of good stuff in Twitter. There's a lot of junk in Twitter. You never know when you're running into a bot. And then they're using bots and they're using all these different, mechanisms with technology to try to market and try to sell, or maybe that's where they're looking for their audience. Like, okay, such and such went viral. Okay, that's what's hot right now. Let's jump into that, instead of actually knowing what, real audiences are looking for. It's just a giant disconnect. They don't know how to market the films. They don't know how to make films that they can then go and market to, the movie going public. Like general audiences, just your run-of-the-mill, regular person, they're not into all of the stuff that's in Hollywood right now. And that's the reason why Hollywood's disconnected. That's why they're going to these other avenues, YouTube, they're going to anime, they're going to video games. Those industries are taking off, and Hollywood is just getting left behind. And I think there will still be a film industry, even though, I think like popular content may dwindle a little bit. There's still going to be a film industry. So, to the point, is Hollywood dying? It's not necessarily dying. I think the Hollywood we know is kind of dying. The film industry, it kind of reminds me of the conversations I've always had about hip hop. Everybody says, oh, hip hop is dead. I'm like, well, no, not really. You can still go out there and find good hip hop if you're looking. But what it is, it's not as popular in the mainstream as it used to be. It is not as good as it used to be in the mainstream. In the mainstream, it's just kind of gotten watered down. It's just kind of dreck at this point. And real good hip hop is still out there. So just like that, industry and culture, film will still survive, but now the question is, what is it going to become? And I think what Christian was saying is that it's going to really be those independent guys that are agile, that can move with the technology, that can make changes and, jump on things fast, instead of being like Hollywood, where we're going to have like a movie in development hell for the next 4 to 5 years. And by the time this thing comes out, like what Blade, it's like it got announced 5 years ago. They're finally getting to shooting it. It's like those types of situations. I think we're going to have to see more independent. The good stuff is going to come from the independents, is what I'm thinking.
It always
that's my guess on the matter.
All right, let me cut everything here. Let's go over chats real quick, and then we'll get back in the conversation. Super chat from B. Marta for $20. Thank you so much for support. I'm tired of bad movies and their agenda. I go to the local theater and get popcorn and Coke to support them, and to bring it home and watch streams like this one. We talked about it. Like, the question came up when a Disney movie comes out, they go to their the theater owners and ask them, is it safe? It's sad that you have to ask that question about Disney right now.
Yep.
All right, let's start here from Christopher Moonlight Productions. I grew up in Hollywood. It's collapsing on itself under the weight of its own degeneracy. And even if they knew how to fix it, it will never hold the prestige of being the pinnacle of entertainment. Yeah, has Hollywood lost its luster? That's an interesting question. Solomon Thornton. This is not the first time Hollywood has died. This version of Hollywood, woke Hollywood, is on the deathbed. Fire the bad execs and get new ones. It will be fine. Plus, indie revolution is key also. Absolutely. All's well that ends well. Are you aware Participant Films just gave up and closed? They won Best Picture for Green Book and Moonlight. They just closed up, gave up. They can't do it. I didn't realize that.
They were also incredibly woke, which was one of the reasons why they weren't making money.
Yeah, they also, nobody was financing them. That's the other part. Like, even with 2 Oscars under their belt, it was not lucrative enough for them to even warrant financing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it shows you the clout that Oscar-winning pictures get nowadays. From CD Sign 69, when these writers and actors unions demand high numbers in writing rooms or having to require an extreme amount of diversity on set, has bloated film budgets while diminishing quality.
Well, the opposite has actually occurred right now. The diversity is no longer a mandate, and the high numbers in a writing room are actually just going back to the model that has been started since the 1960s that lasted all the way up until streaming came, where the streamers studios at the streamers decided, we don't want to have a 6 to 8 development writers room. We just want 3 people to grind out a show, and we're only going to let you do it in 6 weeks now, as opposed to the traditional year. The studios mandated the thing that actually caused the collapse of their own industry, and the writers have actually incorporated in their minimum basic agreement a thing to get them back on track to traditional production. Guess what? You're not going to have those diversity number sets or requirements involved because, again, it goes down to the power of the almighty dollar. If it looks like it's going to have a negative impact on the audience reception, they're not going to do it. It's not going to be learned immediately. As I said, it's going to take around 18 months. But guess what? 2025, 2026, probably going to be some really good years.
So are you saying the WGA is shifting course then, or
the WGA did something brilliant that I never expected them to do, which is they literally put in place to purge out the terrible talent in their industry. Because if you can't make them money on a show, you're not valuable here anymore. And a lot of the people that are complaining are the ones that you've seen not make studios money. Some of the people that are on the Rick and Morty writing staffs, a lot of the people that came out of CW and that were accolades of Greg Berlanti, they're not getting jobs. They're not being able to pitch shows. Nobody's listening to them or hiring to them because they have proven over the last 10 years they cannot make money. They were only working because they were hired for all the wrong reasons. And the fact that a union did that, when instead of protecting their jobs, they said, no, screw you, get the hell out. And they did it in such a way that they thought their own hubris led to them thinking that this would benefit them, when in fact they actually hoodwinked them and said, no, we're getting rid of you because you suck. And we're just not saying it in clear language. But if you actually read the subtext of our agreement, you would have picked up on it like I did back in September and said, thank you, so long. Don't let the door hit your ass on the way out.
Okay. Interesting. For Christopher Moonlight Productions again, Hollywood can't bring costs down until they do away with the guilds. Who insists that every production be bloated with unnecessary crew? That's what left an opening for AI in the market. So I think you just responded to that. Okay. Davina Duckworth, TV got good a short while. The best screenwriters left feature films for television series. Big Blue Dog, the MCU reboot needs to dump the cringe humor. I want Thor Game of Thrones style. Well, I don't think the Game of Thrones style of Thor helped either. All's well that ends well. Jerry is so jaded with his 800 million in the bank. Yeah, these rich white guys. From Cal, I disagree. A story based on rarely represented cultures or countries is interesting because it shows you things that might be new to you and might make you think along different pathways. I think there's room for that. I don't know that you can completely replace it, but I think you can definitely throw things in there. Everything Everywhere all at Once was one of those where, it represented my culture and it was popular, and you just got to thread that needle to produce a product that shows off a culture yet is broad enough to to be interesting to the broader
and
culture.
does it with courtesy and
Beef,
respect,
too.
and is not placating or pandering. Like, that's the thing. The whole reason the South Park pander verse worked is because they said, yes, they don't actually care about these people. They're just pandering to them because they think that's what you like. But when you get someone that actually cares a little bit about it, cares about storytelling, cares about the culture of the stories they're drawing from, people will respond positively to it. And yeah, Everything Everywhere All at Once
Yeah.
proved that.
Yeah,
Yep. That's
Everything
one of the
Everywhere All
reasons
at
I have
Once.
problems with the with race swaps in content, because it's like, we want diversity, so let's go ahead and do a race swap and get some diversity going in this film, like a Little Mermaid, for instance.
Yeah.
When in fact what you should be doing is adapting legitimate original African mermaid stories from Africa, and that's how you will develop the culture, show off the culture, and then you're also given the diversity. So like the
Exactly.
diversity that Hollywood is dipped into, it's just like, this isn't real diversity. You're making Ariel black. That's not really diversity. It's a Danish mermaid, a Danish story. Hey, why don't you go down to Africa? There's a ton of books out there on African mermaid stories that you could easily adapt. And now you're not only doing something creative, because you're bringing a new voice, all right, a new culture into the forefront, Disney. But not only that, but you're getting the diversity that you are crying about is so important to you. So I mean, to me, that's one of the big things. This is a great comment, is that they don't really care about the real, like they more or less care about looking good, like Elon said, looking
It's
good.
not
while
about
doing
culture. It's not about
Yeah.
highlighting culture or highlighting the values of the African countries, which
Right.
I think is more important than just having people that. What are the
Right.
values that the African countries hold? And then
And when
put
they
that
do
in-
it lazily, we get the woman king. Like, that's the other part too, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
When they did it lazily, and we got the woman king, where there's way more. There's probably dozens, if not hundreds, of other stories across all the countries in that continent that would have been
Yep.
far more suitable, far more inspirational and heroic to adapt than one of a person that literally was involved in the slave trade.
All right. All's well that ends well says props to Film Threat. Thank you. That's me. Okay. The chat is legit. All right. Chris is in the chat too. Romina Jones, great panel, real nice mix. Absolutely. That's what we go for. Two more comments here. Rumble from Manola Roberi. Let's see. I can read this. Change will require Hollywood to admit to a mistake that I have little hope. They are a bit conservative. They are indoctrinated by their ideology. The one part of this that sticks out to me is the idea of admit to a mistake. I think that's what we want from the studios right now, to say is, we've made mistakes, and here's what it is, and we are not going to make that mistake for going forward. To me, that is the one thing that Hollywood could do to regain trust in
Only
the
one
future.
person has actually said that, not in those direct words, but only one person has said that, and that was David Zaslav. When he basically complained, we have all these IPs and we haven't done anything with them. That's them basically saying admitting a mistake. But you're only going to get those types of admissions when a new head of a studio comes into power, because the current head is never going to admit a mistake.
Oh yeah, never.
Because that's how they get fired.
Yeah. Speaking of Paramount, let's see. Justin Channels, Film Threat. Someone who came in late. If there was any update on Frank, Chris, I imagine. Yeah, Chris is doing good. Chris is getting there. I'm going to see him actually this afternoon at the Fall Guy press screening, and sooner than later. He'll be back sooner than later. That's all I could basically say. But he will be 100%, and he will be back with us shortly. And then finally, super chat from Babo Yogi for $5. Damn. I know Chris had a stroke, but I never knew that I would make him wear a green hat and glasses. Oh, and that other thing. Yes, go to Chris's Instagram. And one more comment from our friend Neurotic. Hey, Gary. There won't be many studios left to admit to anything at this point.
Well, that's a dream from a lot of people, but yeah, I get where you're coming from. That's a good joke. They won't last the same way, and they're not supposed to. The Hollywood of 1990 is not the same as the Hollywood is today, and the Hollywood of 1990 was not the same as the Hollywood of 1970. So, I mean, the thing is that we've had this delay of that next generation taking the reins, deliberately done so by the previous generation because they didn't want to lose their power. And again, when you don't have that fresh blood coming into the industry, it stagnates, it dies, and eventually the people do come in, and then they have to start a few steps back because they didn't get to learn from the people that should have brought them in to begin with in the first place. So it's going to be very rough time for the entertainment industry for the next few years.
All right. And Gary also says, Nerdrotic also says, Chris is really milking this stroke thing. You have no idea. Look at I can read you my text here. And so let me bring
guys,
up this
I don't know
point.
if I kind of have been under a rock for the last 2 weeks, and I had no idea that Chris had a stroke. And I've just messaged him like, hey, what's going on? I haven't heard from you. And he's like, I had a stroke. Okay.
Yeah, I even offered to bring him stuff in the hospital when he was out here in Vegas, and he never returned any of my texts or anything. He was just like, I just want to be miserable.
I'll just say he knows you all love him. And
Get better soon, Chris.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, get better soon.
Okay, so let's transition into the movie that will save Hollywood, the thing that will make all things better. It just came out today. We are going to watch the trailer to Mufasa. I can do this. Share screen. Here we go. So we're gonna take thankfully only a minute and a half and watch the preview of this soon-to-be masterpiece.
This story begins far beyond the mountains and the shadows. On the other side of the light. A lion was born without a drop of nobility in his blood. A lion who would change our lives forever. Mufasa. The earth will shake. Destiny awaits you.
Whoops. You see that Lin-Manuel Miranda? They finally announced it. Oh my gosh, Hollywood is saved. I mean, The Lion King, one of the best Disney movies ever, and they're bringing us the prequel. They're showing us what happened to him beforehand, and we're not doing that dumb hand-drawn animation. No, we're doing photorealistic animation. Hollywood is saved. What is your opinion of the Lion King trailer?
Well, I love how they made the animals act and jump. It's amazing.
I know.
I also want to say it's good to know that Film Threat doesn't need monetization. I'm just saying.
Actually, Disney's pretty cool about us promoting their movies. Ironically, look, it comes from. I was at CinemaCon. Barry Jenkins came out, the director of this. He talked very fondly of this. Talked about how much the original movie meant to him. He kind of kept the secret of who wrote some of the songs. That's Lin-Manuel Miranda. It's hitting on the string. It's hitting on the nostalgia and all the heartstrings. To me, my issue is I have no idea what this story is about. And I feel like, if you're trying to
becoming a prince, essentially. That's what
it is. Okay. I mean, we kind of got that, but how? I mean, all we're seeing is the spectacle, and I feel like that's been the priority of Hollywood for a very long time. They think what we want are pretty images flashed in front of our eyes, and they don't realize that we really want to know what that story is and whether it's worth spending the money.
I'd rather see Madam Web 2.
I mean, there's a lot.
I wouldn't go that far.
Like Marvel,
you just want to see Madam Web with those big ass glasses. That's what you want.
I mean, I'll just say when the Marvels came out, it was meant for teen girls. I went to my teen daughter and said, "Are you going to see the Marvels? Are your friends going to see the Marvels?" And they all said, "No, the trailer sucked." So is
So who's coming to watch this movie? Who's coming to watch The Lion King or the Mufasa Lion King? Who wants to go and watch this? I mean, who is it marketed?
Of course.
Right. It's what you said. It's spectacle. It's style. There's no substance. I don't know what the story is. I don't care what the story is. I think they did a better job with the original animated Lion King than they do with this live action nonsense. I don't understand it. It's not something that I don't think anybody's going to really check for unless you are just that much of a Disney fan and you just absolutely have to watch and be a completionist and see everything in the theaters. I just don't know who's really coming to see this. Now, will it make some money? Sure. Maybe. Or will it put some butts in seats? Will it have a big, nice opening weekend? Maybe. But then what happens after that? I think the people that are going to watch this at the very beginning are going to watch it, and then that's just it. I don't think this is going to do well. And I saw the trailer, and I was just like, this is a nothing burger for me, man. I'm not a huge like live action person anyway, and this just completely turned me off. I was like, wow, I have no interest in this whatsoever.
Yeah, well, I mean, to get to the main, let me just say, to get to the main subject, has Hollywood lost its ability to brand itself?
Some parts
Hollywood can't Hollywood anymore. I said this in the previous video that I did. I said, I don't think Hollywood knows how to Hollywood, like be Hollywood, be glitz and glamour. There's a lot of spectacle out there, right? There's a lot of spectacle.
They've lost the heart of Hollywood, and I can tell you exactly why. Not only are they making these computer-generated remakes to retain rights to the characters that they have co-opted from the public domain, but they're also... do you know who's going to watch this movie? The people that were children when they watched the original Lion King back in the 90s. That's who they're doing it for. The reason they're making it computer animated to look live action is to basically give them permission to revisit their childhood, but with a more of an adult sensibility, because it's not a cartoon. It looks like it's photorealistic. It's live. And then the idea is for them to bring their kids there and then basically using synergy and vertical integration, get them to watch all the other Disney films. And it kind of worked for the Jungle Book. It worked for the previous Lion King. It worked for Aladdin. They're just doing the same thing here. The problem is that we have an inversion because the cost of effects has actually diminished so greatly over the last 25 years. You no longer actually have to work to get that to that set piece anymore. You don't have to fight. You don't have to worry about only having 3 set pieces in your feature film, and you have to make everything else around that just as good as the set pieces. Now you can just rely on, okay, we can just make set piece after set piece after set piece, and you completely gut the heart of what the story is about that gets people to connect with it, so that when you see that set piece, you're like, oh, there's stakes here. What happens if Mufasa doesn't beat Scar? Oh, no. But if they're constantly fighting, if they're constantly like hopping across alligator noses and hippopotamus backs and leaping off of cliffs into, a pool, nobody's going to care, because what's the stake? You're just showing us interesting visuals. They are literally expecting the entire audience to be high on weed or mushrooms and just sit back and relax like it's an Avatar experience.
To expand on what Script just said, this is an issue that's gone back to when Lucas released the prequels, which is Hollywood's so creatively bankrupt they can't think of anything to do with in terms of sequels anymore to these beloved properties, where there's actually room to be creative and surprise audiences. Like, we know for a fact that how Mufasa dies, right? Because it was in the first Lion King. So we know that any obstacle he faces here is not going to be life-threatening. Like, it takes away a lot of the stakes, and it's part of the laziness of Hollywood, which is they prefer to do prequels because the framework for those stories is already there. They don't have to think of anything new. They don't have to take a risk on any type of story. They don't actually have to know how to develop characters or raise stakes or anything like that you would learn in a basic writing class. And so to me, this is just another like symptom of the deeper problem, which is that Hollywood isn't a place for creatives anymore. It's a place for hacks and business suits and people
money making. They're trying to make money. It's like that's why you go to the prequel, because you already have your built-in audience. Everybody knows the content, they know the story, and okay, we can expect a certain amount of money to come out of this, because fans of the Lion King, I think the last one did like what 1.6 billion in the box office. So I mean, they're expecting to get somewhere in that range. So that's why they'll green like this quick, fast, and in a hurry, because they know, okay, let's get this going, versus a real creative property is just going to sit on the side, or a real creative story will sit on the side. We're not going to give that any attention. We need to make, we need to make this thing go, because we have the built-in audience. We know, and it's so hard to get money out of, people's pockets these days to show up to a movie and watch something. It's hard. That's hard
The-
work, you know. So it's
the
like,
only
let's just
thing-
make it easy for ourselves.
The only thing that makes
And
me
yeah.
want to see this movie is where are these ice caves in Africa? That's what
Yes.
I want to know. That's the big question I have.
That's a good
You
question.
I'm
too.
willing
you're
to pay
interested
money
in
for
Blue
that.
Ivy as well, right? That's also why Blue Ivy is going to be a big draw for you.
Well, the
What's
other part
interesting?
too. Sorry, I
What-
just want to
what-
get this point to your prequel point.
Sorry.
When the goal is already set for you as a writer because you're doing a prequel, it makes everything else so much easier, and that's what the big problem with the prequels. I just want to get that out there.
Yes.
Okay.
So, sorry, Baggage Claim, please.
Yeah, what I was. Okay, I lost my train of thought. Go ahead.
Oh, damn it! I'm so sorry. That's not what I intended
No.
to do.
No,
Yeah. Okay.
it was
so
really good too. I promise.
it would have blown your mind.
On me. I'm sorry.
Christian, did you want to say
Oh, I
anything?
remembered. Sorry,
Oh, okay.
I'm so sorry. What I was gonna say is that Hollywood was responsible for creating these, amazing kind of behemoth style core rocking movies that you would go watch, some larger than life experiences, right? You go and watch Ben-Hur, you watch Lawrence of Arabia, Gone with the Wind, all this. It felt very monumental, and now it just feels like a content farm, right? And
Yeah.
speaking about the branding aspect of it, is that the trailers are all almost designed to give everything away. I know that wasn't the case in this particular one, but often you can just tell what the whole story is going to be with the trailer. And as much as TikTok gets criticized for taking away people's attention spans, which is true, monopolizing a lot of the youth's times, things like that. What's interesting about TikTok is that it's also an avenue to be surprised. You don't know what the algorithm is going to put in front of you. You don't know what you might experience there. And granted, it's an overload because you can go through 1,000 different videos in the span of minutes, but often you can come across something that's so unexpectedly beautiful, moving, engaging, and all created by the singular person, from their home, and just passing that on to you. And that's what Hollywood was about, that you go and you experience something very unexpected. You don't know what you're getting. And I think there's still that inherent desire to be surprised. And that just doesn't exist anymore. If I go for Kong versus Godzilla, I know exactly what's coming out of it. And same with Mufasa. They could have gone with the Simba story and told us, now what happened to that young King, Lion King, what happened to him later? They could have added an interesting story there, but instead, let's go back and rehash sort of a character we already know how his story panned out.
Let me ask
Yeah.
this question. Script Doctor, you mentioned it, but what's missing is the heart of Hollywood. What do you define as the heart of Hollywood? What was lost? What has died over the decades?
It's being able to make connections on general struggles and issues that people have now. And I'm not talking about partisan issues or anything of the current day. I'm just talking about the general aspect. The whole purpose of a story is that someone is in a position in life where they're not happy and they take action to kind of make it better. And they don't just do it for themselves, but they do it also for the people around them that they care about in their lives. And then the villain has the same type of motivation, but it's also selfish, because we don't really grasp onto those things and they're not actually driven in a more inventive and exciting way. We don't actually get we get disposable stories. We get the stories that become escapism because you watch it, you turn it off, you never go back to it again. But remember, entertainment can't be escapism, because if it was, you would never have movies you like Citizen Kane or A Night to Remember or Star Wars or Lethal Weapon, the original Lion King. All of those things resonated with us because they connected to us on another level that was beyond just a partisan message. And because we have lost that, we've had an industry that is geared towards the now so much. This is part of Alan Horn's thing. And I've dealt with Alan Horn's people before. He really pushed, why is this important now? Why does this have to happen now? And that is the dumbest approach you can have to film, because film outlasts us. So it's not about now, it's about tomorrow. And that's what you're doing. And even the best filmmakers, when they talk to kids, they're like, what do you like now? They're not actually trying to make something for their kid then. They're trying to make something for the kid that's going to be around in 3 or 4 years from now. Like, that's how the smart way they do it. But we don't have that level of intelligence. We don't have that level of approach anymore, because there's a whole swath of generation that thought, oh, if we go into Hollywood, it'll be easy money, will have big influence on the culture, and will be the people that guide humanity. And it's like, no, that's not what it is. You go to Hollywood because you have a story you want to tell that you think is important to yourself, and you are praying, hoping, dreaming that other people will resonate with it at the same time. And the people that they have pushed forward are the ones that don't have stories that resonate with people. And the people that do have stories have been suddenly pushed away or have had to go through alternative means, be it on YouTube, self-publishing, self-production, distribution, and in very small markets. All of those things has been the case there. I mean, listen, you can watch Lethal Weapon, a classic movie directed by Richard Donner. It is a love story, but not a romantic love story. It's a brotherly love story. These two guys go through crap, their family's endangered, and they come out of it better men who actually love and care about each other the way that you would want best friends to do that for. And if you don't understand that connection, when you're trying to create like either a sequel to it or another movie than the like of it of a buddy cop, you are missing the entire importance of what brings audiences to watch movies like that.
Yeah. You hit on the point that I was going to say when you asked that question about heart. It's about the storyteller, the heart of the storyteller, and what is it that has been burning in his soul, the story that he wants to put out there to the world. Every storyteller and every writer has something that they are burning and desiring to get to, to a place of Hollywood where they can share this story to the world. It's been living inside of them for 10, 12, 14 years, however long. All right. And that's what's missing right now from Hollywood. It's all corporate. It's all money. It's all about the money. It's not about the storytelling. It's all about pushing forth a message. It's about, whatever, but it's not about an individual that has an important story that's important to them. And yeah, maybe that story isn't important to anybody else. All right. Let's put as many of those stories out there as possible. That's what I feel Hollywood used to do, along with some of the, more fun and escapist stories. Sure. But, you had mentioned, Lethal Weapon, and I had met Shane Black, who was the screenwriter of that film when I was a kid, and he actually inspired me to write, and just listening to him talk about the story that he wanted to, tell was inspiration enough for me. And I think that's what we're missing in Hollywood: screenwriters, directors who actually care about, not a message, but a story, a human story. I think that's what we're missing right now in Hollywood, and the studios just care about money. That's what they care about.
By the way, I think a great example of what's going wrong with Hollywood is that Disney had a smash hit and they left it on their shelf for 5 years. It was Sound of Freedom, and the movie came out last year, made 184 million or so domestically. It's a story that spoke to so many people. And what did the press do to that movie? They slammed it as alt-right and QAnon and said the meanest things about it. So I think when we talk about Hollywood and its struggles, I think the press has done a disservice to both the industry and to the consumers, because they're not helping creativity. Their wokeness often shuts things down. And just the fact that the press attacked an indie movie that became the sensation of the year. What are they thinking? Why would they do that? And where are the Sound of Freedom clones, and where are the Top Gun Maverick clones? I mean, these are smash hits. You should be Xeroxing them. And I don't think that's coming.
No, it's not, because the press isn't the free press anymore. They're bought and paid for by other corporations, and that's a big problem. I mean, the moment that the nightly news was no longer dependent on just informing you about local events plus a couple of world events, but it was all about just getting your ratings because they're selling commercial ad time over that course of that hour, it completely changed its gears. The same thing came with the trades. The same thing came with the publications. As soon as you get more bad news is more sensationalized and more of a draw. I mean, this show that we're doing right now about Hollywood is dying, this is a great sensational headline that grips people in there. But the actual reality is that it's not so black and white, and we're giving it context. So we're actually giving some information to the audience where they're actually going to be able to ponder on this question a lot more than what you normally get in the regular legacy media that is bought and paid for, that has their own agenda, that has their own goal. That's why
I think like Hollywood right now is shifting. A friend of mine, T, who does a live stream with me, he says Hollywood is like a species that's evolving, and it's constantly evolving. It's never going to be like one thing. It's going to be several different things. And so there's going to be several reasons why it dies. It kind of reminds me in a roundabout way of how Hollywood was after the golden era. What you were talking about, Baggage Claim, we got the Ben-Hurs, and we got these 3-hour musicals, and we had all these big productions, and then it had to go down to something as simple as Easy Rider, and that kind of reflipped everything in Hollywood on its head. And now we're in that same like period, I think, where we're coming off of this, the splash and dash of a Marvel movie just isn't good enough anymore. Nobody's really checking for that. Nobody's checking for these, $300 million Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, or these, like Fast 9 or Fast 10 or whatever it was. I didn't watch it. But whatever it was that came out last year, they spent like $400 million. And it's like, it's coming out of that era. We're coming out of that. People are tired of that. And I think whoever can figure out how to be the next, Dennis Hopper, Peter Fonda, that's going to be the guy that's going to take Hollywood into a completely different direction. But yeah, the splash and the spectacle, it's over. Nobody's going to be watching this Mufasa, the Lion King. I don't think this thing is going to do well in the box office. I could be wrong, but I don't think it will be.
And culturally, there used to be, not that long ago, even just that concept of, people stood by their principles. Money was not as important than their principles, compared to their principles. What you guys mentioned about even the legacy media, the idea that a journalist could be paid to not talk about something was just considered outrageous, and his willingness to accept that was considered outrageous. And there was a lot of self-editing people did, where they said, you know what, I won't even have self-respect enough or to call myself a journalist if I accept money and not reveal this particular story, or don't review this movie because of whatever I've been told to pitch this framing that this is an alt-right movie. And now it's all become about get that bag. Everybody says, oh, just get the bag. What matters is just get the money. Your principles don't matter. They're for sale. You're for sale. And this is kind of taken over everything from, what's the difference between someone being willing to compromise on their ideals to get money versus a woman willing to sell her body on OnlyFans, right? It's the same idea, is that you're for sale.
Yep.
All right. We have over 1,900 people watching us on both YouTube and Rumble. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for your support. Like, subscribe, follow, hit that like button, lick the like button. Whatever you can support us,
it might lick back.
One question I have is the business of Hollywood viable? Is the current structure, the current way that the big studios are being run, is it bound to collapse upon itself, or is there a major course correction that's going to happen?
It's bound to correct it right now. We're basically Hollywood's biggest mistake was adapting Netflix's model for streaming as opposed to the cable and network model that existed prior for streaming, because that would have been easier. Listen, watching live TV on your mobile phone, being able to watch your favorite shows if you can't catch them live at your own whim without any issues, or having to wait for it to be rerun on syndication the next couple of weeks or a time shift or whatever. That was what customers wanted. Customers want things at their fingertips, but when you don't do that, when you try to copy Netflix and then you take product away from Netflix and put it to yourself, and you're burning through cash, spending millions upon millions of dollars to generate new content for it, you are going to collapse. Now, luckily, not so much luckily, but oddly enough, the only studio that didn't do that was Peacock, and they're raising their prices next month by like $2 and they also got rid of their basic tier, which is also another foolish aspect. But of all the streaming services, they're the only ones that don't actually have to spend tens of millions of dollars restructuring their format to allow for ad placements in their program. They're already ahead of the game. So they're actually losing probably less money per day than all the other streaming services that are going to have to start saying, well, now that we're going to an ad tier, we have to generate a new algorithm that allows that ad tier to work. And then we have to start figuring out, how do we disclose our numbers so we can sell those ads for the highest value to, advertisers. That's one big mistake. The other big mistake is they've killed their distribution windows. So they're not investing as much in physical media anymore. They're not investing as much in network and cable broadcasts as well. They're kind of burning through those avenues as quickly as possible, hoping to grab as much cash as they can, as opposed to doing patience. Like, people really get excited when they saw a movie in theaters, and then a year later they're reminded about it because it's coming out on network or cable. They're like, oh yeah, I love that movie. Oh, why didn't I buy that? I can't remember. Maybe I got distracted. Maybe I just didn't have money in the account. You know what? Was it as good as I remember? Well, let's go watch it on TV. And if it is, heck, then I'll go down to the store. I'll buy it. They don't understand that relationship anymore. And
Well,
because they're screwing up with this business model, if they don't change it quickly enough, they are going to go into greater debt and probably be bought up by other companies that'll have to spend tens and if not hundreds of millions of dollars reinventing them.
and also, Hollywood has had a successful business model for decades, right?
Mhm.
I can remember, when the TV came out, people were like, "Oh, this is the death of movie theaters. Like nobody's going to want to leave their house to go see a movie." And then they innovated. They came up with CinemaScope. They came up with widescreen. They came up with better service at the movie theaters. So sometimes disruption can cause a business model to evolve and actually become better and more profitable. The issue that we're running into in the modern day of streaming is that nobody actually sat down and thought about the business model. What they did is they looked at the subscription model for HBO and Showtime and stuff like that, which had their own kind of like direct to consumer services. But the value proposition for something like HBO was that, hey, you would pay a fee to get HBO because they were not only showcasing content that you love to watch, and it was cheaper overall if you watched a lot of movies, but they were also giving you original content that you couldn't get anywhere else. You could cuss on HBO, you could show boobies on HBO, you could do all this stuff that regular TV couldn't, and so it was an alternative that people were willing to pay for. The issue when it comes to the streaming stuff, and I kind of look at what Les Moonves had in mind for the original CBS All Access, which then became Paramount Plus. And you look at where Paramount is right now in terms of like being on the chopping block. If Les Moonves hadn't gotten Me Too'd and he had actually kind of carried out his vision for how he wanted their direct to consumer platform to go, what he was looking at it as was an expansion of CBS's ability to deliver ads. So basically, he was like, if I can get to the kids who are on their cell phones, if I can get to rural audiences that are using satellite dishes or like whatever the case may be, he's like, the more CBS content that I can deliver direct to consumer, the more ability I have to serve them ads. And that was like his whole business model. He was actually the only one kind of thinking about it. Mm-hmm. And in a way, Peacock adopted the CBS All Access model that he was kind of pioneering, because they were also coming at it from a network TV perspective of the only way to make this stuff profitable is to sell ads to the right demographic and stuff like that. But in addition to that, with having their own services that people sign up for, you also get all the demographic data. You get all the viewing data that you don't have to have filtered by Nielsen, right? So like there are a lot of benefits to it, but nobody ever actually thought like, okay, the only reason people moved to streaming to begin with was because cable was too expensive. And the minute you start having all these competing services out there for people's money, it suddenly becomes another version of cable, even more expensive. And so nobody actually sat down and gamed this theory out as to like, okay, what's the value proposition that we're bringing to the audience ultimately? It was just like, oh, can we rush to get the most content out as possible to make it worth the subscription fee and to lower the churn rate? And there's a very specific reason why Netflix emerged the winner in all this, and that's because they had the right business model that they had been perfecting for a long time before these studios got into it. And now the studios are trying to figure out, okay, we've committed so much money to this endeavor. How are we going to recoup our investment? So they're desperately trying to figure out, okay, can we charge more monies for different tiers? Can we serve ads? What's going to be the thing that's going to keep this thing profitable? And right now, the only thing that they've actually come up with is to produce less content and give people less reason to keep paying a monthly fee. It absolutely astonishes me. I think Sony was the only studio that had it right, where they're like, we're not going to rush into this because we don't know how we're going to make money off of it. And they're the only ones who are still kind of like a traditional studio in the sense that they don't have like the distribution arms. They're strictly production, and they're selling stuff to Netflix, and they're selling stuff to theaters and stuff like that. And they seem to be the ones more so than Universal and NBC, with the success of Peacock, which from what I'm hearing behind the scenes, like it's not as successful as a lot of people are saying it was. No. Sony's the only one that's actually coming out ahead of this. And that's just because they didn't spend all the money throwing it into the money pit to try to compete with the streaming wars.
No, they shuttered their programs. They had a PlayStation Network, which was on for a bit. That it had its flagship show was Powers, which is a comic book adaptation. And then they had Crackle. Both of those failed very quickly, and they immediately said, we're not investing any money in this anymore. We're pulling out. NBC on Peacock. One of the reasons why Peacock isn't successful is NBC hasn't made anything what people want to watch. That's why nobody's watching it over there. CBS had
wrestling.
Well, they have wrestling now, but prior to that, they had nothing over there. And Matthew Cadis is absolutely right, because the way that I saw when they were announcing streaming service, I was thinking back into the 90s where you'd go to your channel 05 and it would show you the TV guide slots. And it's like, oh, these are the windows of hours of various shows. And it's like, if you just take that and you put into a point and click function where it's like, oh, look, there's going to be this episode of Saturday Night Live that I missed last night. I can click on it and watch it now because it just aired, kind of like what Hulu was doing. If they adopted that there and not try to compete with Netflix, there would be no issues, because they would literally have an at your fingertips on demand network that you would probably pay the same as a cable package for, but you'd probably then cancel your cable package because you're getting it all on the internet and on the mobile.
It's called YouTube TV Script. You should check it out.
Here's the other part too. So the streamers and studios also did a terrible thing. They tried to compete with YouTube when what they should have done is just done the exact same thing that they did with television 70 years ago, which is like, no, we need to use YouTube to advertise not only our movies, but our television shows. We don't want to compete against it. We want to actually make them work for us. And they tried doing that by setting up their various channels over here, but they also didn't really oversaturate the ad market of what they could do on YouTube to generate eyes coming to their services as well.
Also, what was interesting is what Amazon used to do. They since kind of like stopped doing this, but they were kind of throwing their hat into the ring of like being letting users upload content like their own movies and TV shows and stuff like that to the Amazon platform. That and the biggest problem with streaming is the content creation aspect of it, where you have to keep spending money to create content to meet the demand because people burn through it so quickly. Whereas if you just opened it up to basically the marketplace and let people upload their home movies or like whatever the case may be, like you solve that issue right away. And then you have more content with which to serve ads on and more content with which to lower the churn rate on these things. And YouTube, YouTube has made more money than every single major network combined on TV in the past like 5-6 years, I believe.
Yep.
So like the idea here is that like just do YouTube's model if you want your OTT service to be successful. But people in Hollywood are like just don't understand basic economics, basic business, nothing along those lines. And so what they're doing now is they're pulling back. They're using the excuse, oh, it's quality over quantity. It's like, no, you guys don't even know how to do quality. Like you're just cutting back because you can't afford to do it anymore, right? Bidenomics at play. So, like this whole idea about the Hollywood business model, it's perfectly viable if you go back to theatrical release, physical media, video on demand in the 6-month window, stuff like that. If they just went backwards in time, back to their original business model, they'd be fine. But now that they're trying to basically compete in an industry that they don't understand and have no data for and have no creativity for, they're going to keep failing. They're going to keep losing money. And it's hurtful for the industry. Like actors and directors and producers aren't going to be able to make as much content anymore. And consumers are going to have a lot less content to consume. So they're going to have to go back to older stuff. But it's a mess right now. And until like a cabal of studio heads get together and say, okay, this is the direction we're steering the industry in, it's just going to get worse.
I agree with.
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I just want to say I agree with everything you just said, Matt, because I think that's really the problem. But I think what Hollywood is seeing is what's the future. They're trying to maybe get the Gen Z, Gen Alpha crowd that's hooked into the internet. They're hooked into, social media. Like, social media has exploded over the last decade and a half. And I think they recognize that. And they're like, okay, how do we adjust what we're doing to what our future audience is doing? Like my kids do not care about movies. They will not go to a
Quibi.
Yeah. Yeah. That's that. And I think that's the conundrum that they're running into is they're saying, okay, like they probably have kids as well. And they're like, yo, my kids don't go to movies. I am a movie fan. I've taken my kids to I don't know how many movies. And it's like, okay, guys, what do you want to see this week? I'm good. Like they don't care. They just don't care about going to the movies the way we did when we were coming up. Movies were it for us. And they have a different way of looking at it. They're more into their streaming, their phones, YouTube, content, video games. The video games have exploded as well. I just think that's the big problem that Hollywood is trying to solve. I don't have a solution. I don't know if the solution is the what you're saying and say, hey, man, just open it all the way up on your streaming platforms to just like YouTube has done and Google. I don't know if that is a Hollywood. Is that where they want to go with it? Or do they want to try to go back to the old school Hollywood? But then how many of the new generations are going to be checking for that?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm
asking questions. I don't have answers on that.
Yeah, let me move on. But it's sad that kids no longer want to make out in movie theaters anymore. Okay, so let's talk about one of the big economic factors in Hollywood today, and what is the future of the $200 million monster?
Oh, I hope it dies.
Can Hollywood sustain movies at this budget anymore? And what are the ramifications of going back to the $100 million, $50 million, $75 million movie?
I think we saw the ramifications of that last year, right? It's like all of these big box office bombs that came out. Yeah, I think it's dead.
Well, it comes down to AI, right? Like this is going to be what helps Hollywood keep the quality up and also keep the cost down. Now, I know that Script and I have had disagreements over the use of AI in the past. He's coming at it from a writer's perspective, and writing scripts via AI is a losing proposition, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to replacing actors, when it comes to replacing voice actors, when it comes to replacing location scouts, when it comes to replacing effects houses, when it comes to replacing scores, like the people who make the musical scores for movies, this is all stuff that eventually AI will be able to do for the director / producer or whoever the creative head of whatever piece of art is being created. Is that basically eventually the studios are going to adopt this technology. They're going to have it tailored specifically for their needs. They're going to have a team of coders or prompters who are basically in-house that they're like, okay, for this movie, we need this many sets that AI is going to generate. We need these types of actors who we're going to buy the actors' likeness rights instead of actually paying them to be on set, blah, 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 blah. They're going to do all this stuff at a much cheaper and faster rate because the technology is going to be there. Like James Cameron himself said that we're like 2-3 years away from a fully produced AAA Hollywood movie being generated entirely by AI. Now, you'll always need good creatives to oversee the project and make sure that, the story is good, the visuals are good, stuff like that. Like, I think Zack Snyder would benefit from AI more than any other filmmaker on the planet at the moment. But the idea here is that the technology is in the pipeline. It's coming towards us like a tidal wave to basically make content creation cheaper and quicker than it has ever been in the history. Like, you don't need craft services, you don't need unions, you don't need any of this stuff. You just need a guy who knows how to write prompts sitting in front of a personal computer for 18 hours a day or whatever the case may be. And in addition to that, you're going to see a huge indie movement outside of Hollywood as this technology becomes available, because people are finally going to have the ability to take what's in their heads and put it on screen for people to enjoy, whether it be on YouTube or whether it be in cinemas or some type of streaming service that allows user content uploads and stuff like that. You're going to see all that blow up, and you're going to see the rise of the true auteur in the indie movement, where basically you have these people who have a vision, who know how to tell a good story, and finally have the tools with which to do so. And I think one of the reasons that young kids are kind of elusive to Hollywood right now is because I know my 10-year-old, he's on YouTube constantly, and he's watching some very, creative, interesting, low effort content where the upcoming generation doesn't need the flash and sizzle of, that Hollywood. You had the Watcher Network just recently get into a big issue where they're like, we want to create TV production quality shows. And their audience was like, hey, we liked it better when you were on BuzzFeed and just doing like janky stuff out of like an office with like, like subtitles and stuff like that. Audiences don't need the flash and sizzle of a professional, quote unquote, professional production anymore. They've gotten used to like the homegrown, more authentic style content, and kids, they just want stuff that's fun, quick, and funny. And so they don't care if, somebody spent $200 million on a movie, because they could go on YouTube and find something that somebody spent maybe like $5 on to like buy a piece of software and just made it quick and funny, or took a video game and turned that into like a little like 10-minute short that they consume, and then they move on, and as long as like there's new stuff in the pipeline on YouTube, they're happy. And so Hollywood hasn't quite grasped this concept that you don't need to spend a lot of money to entertain people. But and the upcoming young generation, like that's really more of what they're focused on, is authentic, fun, short, not slick, but entertaining stuff. It's more about the nature of the content than it is about the visuals of the content or the quality of the content. The only thing you really need to focus on is sound. You have to have good sound. But other than that, like you can shoot stuff on your iPhone and kids would find it just fine. Most of TikTok is people shooting stuff on their phones, like whether it be dancing or, like pulling pranks or doing stunts or whatever the case may be, but it's all real.
Even Mr. Beast is getting to that same conclusion, because obviously his videos have gotten more and more bombastic and highly produced, and he's starting to notice that the outcome of that, the return on that, is only so much, that if he actually slows things down and lets his audience have more of a connection to the various contestants that he has in his videos, that ends up serving far better, because again, it's the realness of it, it's the authentic aspect of it that is more interesting to the audience.
Yeah, what's authentic about $200 million? It's like, how close can you get to your audience? I mean, you can make something that looks amazing, but I think the smaller budget films have always spoken to us a lot better. I love when I hear a movie is under $100 million. I'm okay. Then they spent time writing a good story, or they spent time, acting this thing out, and that's where the money is at. Not necessarily all into special effects and this, spectacle. I don't care about spectacle. I think nowadays we're just kind of over that. We just want good content.
The reason why we have $200 million, it always comes down to unions. All the union demands, like we're not even talking about actors and writers unions or directors union. We're talking about Teamsters. We're talking about the culinary union. We're talking about IATSE. We're talking about all these unions that have all these requirements that have to be met financially and, contractually, that are bloating these budgets up, and Hollywood just can't escape them, because they're forced to deal with these unions. If you were to get rid of the union fees and the union minimums and all this other stuff to create content, you would see we could be making $50 million movies that look like $200 million.
Let me we still can make $50 million movies. The thing is that they're budgeting for the crew that they need, where in some cases, like for instance, Bad Robot, Skydance, and other studios like themselves figured out that if they include more people, more labor into their product, into the production, they get more money up front first, which is what actually causes the bloat. You don't need to actually bring a special effects crew to Georgia or somewhere in the Sudan and then inflate a bunch of green screens out there when you already have the backdrop that you're supposed to be using. That's not necessarily a union problem. That's a producer exploiting the unions for their own financial gain. And that's the other part that you have to take into account, because we already know that there are a number of people that can actually make movies under a budget because they're actually following the union minimums. They're following the basics. Godzilla Minus One cut out all the fat of not the unions, but the executives that are in between the people that are doing the work, that are causing the delays, that are causing the expensive stuff. Victoria Alonso didn't even pay attention to any of the jobs that she was doing. She delegated it to a whole bunch of other staffers, and those staffers' decisions caused all of those workers and laborers to redo their stuff over and over and over again. That's where you get the bloat. If you have it more organized, if you have it more structured as what is being requested, then you don't have the bloat. And the other part too is you also have the accountants. They say, well, we know if we spend $100 million, we're going to get $300 to $500 million in the box office. But that's not true. That's just a happenstance of a metric where they ended up spending that money on a good movie that people showed up for. They don't take into those accounts. What you really have to just do is realize, you got to cut costs where they're not necessary. You have to realize, if we're going to do an action-hero film, let's make only 2 or 3 set pieces of movie instead of 12 or 20. Let's make sure that we actually have good talent actors. We get the full amount of the stuff. We make our day. We budget and schedule accordingly, and we have a fun time. And we don't keep on going back in the edit and reshooting and rewriting and redirecting and bringing people back and conflicting in schedules, and all that type of stuff is causing the bloat. Then the other part too is, if you think you're going to have a big budget, that's what the film markets are for. That's what pre-sales are for. Every studio pre-sales their movies so that they don't have to spend as much of the lines of credit that they borrow to complete it. They want to get the maximum amount of profit. Unfortunately, right now it's Universal, Sony, and Warner Brothers that are trying to actually curtail the budgets and say, we don't really want to be breaking $125 to $150 million on our tentpole films. We want to get back to the $60 to $90 million on a tentpole film. And whether or not they're going to be able to pull that off, I don't know. Union negotiations for IATSE starts this coming month. They've already got the 14 ancillary locals of that union already got tentative agreements that are looking good and not crazy. But to your point, when it comes to the AI, in order to reduce costs, When the lower you, the more you lower the barrier of entry, the more you lower the level of quality. And that's actually true, because you look at it on YouTube, look at it on TikTok, look at it on Instagram. There are millions upon millions of videos on YouTube. All of them suck. You find maybe one or two that are actually really good. There's a reason why Mr. Beast climbed up and overshadowed PewDiePie. He had a little bit more quality, a little bit more production. But why weren't we getting more fierce competition? Why weren't there 3,000 other Mr. Beasts like people vying for that number one spot? Why? Because, again, when the barrier of entry is so low, the quality standards are not existent.
You're
Okay.
right to a certain extent.
Actually,
but,
let me. I don't want to belabor this too long, but we've got some changes to do. We have a tag team situation going here. Matt,
Yeah.
you got to go.
Yeah.
Let us. Yeah, give us your socials.
I will. But Script Doctor, consider yourself lucky that Alan stepped in there, because I was about to take it to school. Check us out at the Salty Nerd Podcast here on YouTube. We do live streams every Tuesday and Saturday, talking about movies, making fun of Hollywood, all that fun stuff. So be sure to go over there and subscribe if you get a chance, and check us out on our live stream. Other than that, I want to thank Alan for being such a great host, and I also want to thank Chris. Thank God he's still alive and he's doing better, hopefully. Hope to see him again. Thank you guys for inviting me on the show today. And I'm really sorry I got to miss Epic Mike, because he is one of a kind. And I love, we've had him on our show before, and I love talking to him. But Script, Christian, Baggage Claim, EA, it was great being on a panel with you guys. You guys are all very intelligent and have good things to say. So I felt very honored to be on today. So thank you very much, Alan.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks, Matt, for joining us.
Thanks, Matt.
All right.
Thanks.
And we're gonna bring on Epic Mike. Finally, some diversity on this panel.
Yeah, I know. Time zones are my biggest weakness. I was already going to be late because CP time is like 15 to 20 minutes late. But I was I looked at my clock, my alarm went off, and I was like, oh, I'll go mosey on over to these guys. And I was like, nope, they're already started, and I've missed a ton of time already. So apologies. Yeah.
Oh, no problem. I figured as much. But let's go on to our last topic here, and I think it's the big one. We've talked a little about indie filmmakers, and Mike, you're here, and you're going to fall in this category. But is there hope for indie filmmakers? And one of the mantras I've been touting this year, 2024, is Hollywood's no longer the dream. I don't know that you want to be in the Hollywood system. I don't know that you want to sell your soul or sell your properties, your IP. Is it best just to stay away from Hollywood and let it collapse upon itself? Or is there hope? What are your thoughts? Mike, let's start with you.
I mean, I'm slightly biased because I'm in the process of starting an independent production company. I will say this, one of the things that I was really surprised about when getting into this industry was how many people are not working in the industry that did at one point work in the industry and stopped working in it due to burnout, due to mistreatment, due to a myriad of things. It was kind of eye-opening the first time that I directed one of our projects. We put a lot of emphasis on making sure that team members and everybody we're checking in with people, and obviously on a smaller production it's a lot easier to do this. But one of the things that we ran into and we got a lot of feedback on, they were like, wow, the amount of decency and the way with the fact that you guys are checking in on us and making sure that safety protocols are being checked in with, and all these different things that we thought were kind of no-brainers, that they're like, these things aren't happening on some of these bigger productions because it's all about how to get through things as fast as possible. And a lot of the little guys are the ones that end up getting treated the worst, because everybody's trying to work on things, and because you have like 250 people on a set or whatever the thing is. I would say this, I think the current Hollywood standard is over. I think media in general is in a massive transition, and for a lot of these studios, you can see the writings on the wall, because when you become too big to pivot and adjust, you're inevitably just going to crash into the wall that is change. And then, whatever the fallout is of that, that's where you see new things come, people come into power, or new filmmakers or new filmmaking techniques, things like that. And like I said, I'm a little bit biased, but I definitely think that the way to go going forward is definitely going to be independent companies that are working with each other and working alongside of each other to build something, because filmmaking has become more accessible now than ever before. But it's also, I would argue, more gate kept than ever before, because a lot of these, they were talking about this earlier, a lot of smaller mid-budget movies have been like removed. They don't want those. They every movie has to have $100 million, $200 million budget. And it's a really weird thing, but it also prevents certain people from working on things, because people don't want to work on a $200 million budget film. They want to work on smaller indie projects, or they want to work on something where they feel like they actually have creative control. And I think right now what we're seeing is a lot of people just burn out and just move on to other things or move into other avenues. But I think with the rise of more independent filmmakers, I think we'll see a resurgence of people that used to work in the industry that are now getting involved and wanting to help these new people and help newcomers learn the ropes and do things right, or do things better than these other production companies did it.
Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I like everything you just said. I think that's exactly where the independent film industry is headed to, because you said like the bloat and the bureaucracy of these giant studios, they can't be nimble, they can't be, agile to, react to things. And like the technology that we see right now, I mean, the technology is opening it up to everybody. Everybody can do something in this game. And so I love that. I'm actually, excited to see what comes out of Epicverse. I'm excited to see what other independent, filmmakers are doing. I know there's a lot of cats out there. A friend of mine is working on his own independent film. Everything right now, it seems like we're at a crossroads because of the evolution with not just the technology that makes it more accessible, but just what Hollywood's been doing to themselves. Everybody's looking, entertainment's not going anywhere. People are still going to want to be entertained. And if Hollywood's not going to give it, who's going to do it? Is it going to be, is it going to be video games? Sure, video games will be there. We're going to see more in the anime side. We're going to see more on YouTube. But I think independent film, I mean, when you say is there hope, I think there's nothing. I think hope is, there's a big opportunity, for everybody that's jumping into that arena. I think we're about to see a renaissance. That's how I'm gonna say. We're about to see a renaissance of filmmakers, and it's going to be exciting. It's like I was saying, it's like the Peter Fondas and the Dennis Hoppers that made Easy Rider coming out of the golden era of Hollywood, and how they just completely changed the game going into the 70s. I think that's what we're about to see. We're about to see something on that level, and it's exciting. I can't wait.
Well, actually, that hasn't stopped. In fact, Roger Corman, who's over 90 years old, is an independent filmmaker who's been making independent movies since the 1950s. Indie has never actually changed. People always come into indie. That's where they get their start. That's where Steven Spielberg, Francis Ford Coppola, Robert Zemeckis, George Lucas, they all got started in indie. The thing is that this is the axiom. The alternative always becomes the mainstream. Epic Mike, if he gets tons of hits back to back in a row, he will be Hollywood. That's how the rule works. So there's nothing you can do to avoid it. Hollywood is always going to be the end point of the independent filmmaker success. The reason that there's been a gap is because the current people that are in Hollywood right now haven't been actually looking at independent anymore. That's just the thing. They're not looking for those people. They're trying to be kingmakers within their own industry. And and these are the people that were made kings by being an independent. They literally are looking at independence like, this is our competition. We don't want to lose the positions and the prestige that we have. Like, every time someone has come out from the independent sphere, be it M. Night Shyamalan or unfortunately J.J. Abrams, who again is more of a producer, not a director, that when they were anointed as the next Spielberg, guess what happened to their careers? They kind of vanished and kind of imploded in himself, because when you have someone as powerful as Spielberg, you don't want to be anointed as the next one, because he's like, wait, you're actually putting me out to pasture right now. I'm going to show you how much power in this industry I really have and knock you down. Well, now, it's also to their mistake in the fact that they acknowledged that they'd also be the next Spielberg as well, because if they just said, I can never replace Spielberg, they would have probably survived and made other choices. But the independent film will always be around.
I kind of want to I want to push back a little bit. And that's only because, like, there's one of the things that feels different now. And I think one of the things that we're going to see that's different now is the rise of things like social media, YouTube, and some of these platforms where now you can see behind the curtain a lot more. I say that because I also, like, was for a long time was really into and kind of involved in being pro wrestler and pro wrestling, and that industry has massively changed because of social media and because things back in the day you didn't know the difference between real and fake. Undertaker, when he threw somebody in a casket and said that they died, the announcer screamed they died, people thought that they died. They didn't know any better. Nowadays, you know that that's not true. So you have to adjust how the stories are told. And there's been kind of a pushback, and at least in my sphere, one of the things I don't want to do is I don't want my company to become so big that I start acting the way that Hollywood did when it comes to treating, smaller people like they've been treated. I also don't want to gatekeep the industry and gatekeep people out of the industry that want to innovate. And that's unfortunately what happens, like you said, with the old guard, is a lot of times the old guard doesn't want to step out of the way. And so they kind of choke down anybody that's around. And I think this new wave of independent creators that we're going to see, people coming out of YouTube. We just saw it with the two brothers from Australia that did Talk to Me. We even saw it a little bit with like Jordan Peele, at least with his first film. I think he's kind of been taken over. A lot of times what happens is these people step into the industry sees they have talent and they offer them a key to the kingdom. And I think what we're going to start seeing is a lot of these people push back against that and say, I don't want that key. I kind of want to do my own thing and keep doing it, because I have more creative freedom. I have more fun. I've had many conversations with people that say, I would rather work for peanuts and have creative control than have a big contract and have to work for another Hollywood, or big company. And I think that that's going to be kind of the consensus going forward, is less money, but more freedom. And I think that I think we're going to start seeing again, instead of these bigger companies that kind of run everything and have control of entertainment, I think we're going to see a lot of smaller hubs around the United States and around the world, and they kind of do their own thing, and they're known for their own thing. They're known for putting out a certain kind of product and style of product. And instead of everybody fighting each other for who's the big dog on campus, I think there's going to be a lot of people that go, yo, like, you do your thing over there, I'll do my thing over here, and maybe we'll collaborate occasionally and make something really awesome. But I think that to be honest, is the way forward, because we can see now for the first time, we can really see what's going on behind the scenes. We can really see why these companies are struggling or why they're failing and why they're falling off. And we can also pivot faster than they can. So I can make a movie that is more relevant than they can, because they have to go through all the hoops and stuff like that. But I don't want the keys to that kingdom. I want to make my own, and I want to help other people around me be able to build something instead of jumping into what's already been established.
Okay. About what you
I gotta shut you guys down.
I know.
I gotta shut you guys down.
You
got to get the comments and then final thoughts. Let's do this. From Johnny for 10 Polish Zolties. There you go. And then he brings us a comment for another 10. Thank you very much. Eventually Disney will have a W. How will you react? I would love it if Disney made a good movie. I would absolutely love it. So please do. No hate on my end, but they won't. There you go. From Albert Nadia Retro for $5 CAD. Anyone goes to see a Madam Web sequel for big glasses should try the strip club in Toronto. They'll stick their big glasses right in your face. I don't know what that means. I absolutely don't know what that means. All right, from Curtis Nelson for $1.99. For $1.99, Hollywood lost its passion to tell stories. Yep.
Disney definitely has. Yeah.
From Oliver Lavery Farag for 10 pounds. It looks like being a director at all is nowadays seen as a prize, not a job. The idea of rolling up your sleeves and having the reaction to the film be the prize is an alien concept. Yeah, I think a lot of people in Hollywood, going in Hollywood, are looking for titles, looking to gain titles. And from Albert Nada Retro again for $5 CAD. Fan films are so good that Paramount basically brought the hammer down on fan-made Star Trek stuff because it was better than what they were producing.
No, that's not it at all. That's actually wrong. Someone was trying to profit off of the Star Trek IP, and that's why they brought the hammer down. In fact, Paramount, now is with them at the time, was so proud of every fan film of Star Trek that was made. They encouraged it, and they even held festivals and contests for it. And then when one jerk off decided, hey, I'm going to make money off of Star Trek, they said, no, you can't do that. And then they came down. So don't.
How dare you bring facts?
Whoever's telling you that they got jealous is lying to you, people.
Yeah. How dare you bring facts into this conversation? From Marty Marty D. Mick 12. Let's see. Indie film will not save the cinema. We have an overwhelming glut of indie films being made, and the majority of it is unwatchable garbage. You're not wrong, but at the same time, there's an art to indie film, and there's a formula that you've got to kind of find. And I think that's what is going to happen here.
It's the training grounds, man. That's what's great about it.
Yes. And Robert, hey.
Hello there.
We're about to end things. You probably thought we were starting at 3, didn't you?
I did.
Yeah. No, we had to move it up because
that was my mistake too. I was like, oh my God, they're already going.
Sorry, but I want to thank you for being here. So we're gonna go around the horn and give final thoughts. Robert, you can give us your final thoughts.
I'll give final thoughts.
Yeah,
I can do that.
One more comment. Albert, not a retro for 2 Canadian. I apologize on the Paramount comment. Do not apologize for your Paramount comment. It felt true, and therefore it was true. Like the hell with Script Doctor for throwing water on your parade here.
Feelings over facts.
Yes, exactly. So you do not need to apologize. But we appreciate the 2 Canadian for having done it. So thanks.
And as a fellow Canadian, I salute you, sir.
All right.
The facts do care about your feelings.
Absolutely. Let's get sorry, I gotta pull these banners off. Let's go around the horn and give us your final thought. Derek.
So let's just I just wanted to, the last thought I had is basically, going back to what Epic Mike was just talking about. I think the true creatives that are more in this for the creativity, for the filmmaking, for the storytelling, and not in it to make their money. I think that they are the ones that we're going to start following, because everything is wide open right now when it comes to entertainment. And, people are looking for like folks that have a voice, that actually care about the movies that they're making, that care about the stories that they're telling. They're not interested in the agenda. They're not interested in, spectacle. They're interested in real human stories. And I think we're going to get that from the indie film industry more than we are from Hollywood going forward. So yeah, that's how I want to end things.
All right, Christian, go for it.
I'm amazed at how quickly culture changes and how quickly our habits change. So no matter what happens, I think we're going to roll with the punches. And I also think at the end of the day, no one here or anywhere knows where we're headed because things are evolving so quickly. Real quickly though, I have an independent filmmaker friend, and he just made a movie for well under 100,000, and it's really good. I saw a rough cut of the movie, so I'm happy that the technology is moving so quickly that it gives the tools to storytellers to tell the stories they want to tell on their terms. And then at the end of the day, you can load it to Rumble, you can put it on YouTube, you can create your own website and make people pay for it if you want to. So, I mean, it feels democratic at the end, and I really like that.
All right, Script.
Well, I think independent movies have always been the source of creative risk-taking and inventive ideas. That is why Hollywood snatches them up when they're successful and integrates them into the system. That has always been the thing since the days of when Roger Corman started out. And that is not ever going to change. The technology will make it more accessible, but it'll also make it a lot harder to find the real talent out there, because when everyone thinks that they can make a movie and make it special, the ones that stand out are going to have a harder time doing so, based not on the metrics of quality, but on the metrics of popularity. And that's what's going to actually have to be dealt with in this new generation of the future when it comes to entertainment in Hollywood.
All right, baggage claim.
I think one of the more disturbing trends that I've seen in Hollywood, aside from the lack of talent, the lack of good storytelling, I think it is this massive negativity around all topics. We see the worst aspects of humanity. We see all the negative aspects kind of elevated. So even, Game of Thrones is such a great show, but you really do see the worst parts of human beings on display without much hope. And I think that's really what's missing from Hollywood. Hollywood used to be about hopeful stories and giving people not just some escapist fantasy, but also representing ideals that we should be endeavoring on an individual level to live up to. One of the reasons that Lord of the Rings on this re-release is going to do so well is because fundamentally that that movie is about hope. It's about doing the right thing. It's about standing up against evil and not giving in to our baser instincts of whether it's killing people, hurting people, anything like that. So I think that I really hope that aspect of values and hope comes back to Hollywood, and I think that's what would save it at the end of the day.
All right, Mike, Epic Mike.
Yeah. I don't know. I once again I apologize for being late. That's my main closing statement, because wow, I was like, holy cow, I missed that whole stream. I would have loved to, I love the conversation already that I got to be part of. But yeah, I think we're in transition right now, and change rarely comes peacefully, especially when it means people are going to lose power, money, access, whatever the thing is that they're going to lose out on. But I'm really excited. I think if you're an independent creator out there, this is the perfect time to try to get started on something. Storytelling needs you. We need people that are hungry for storytelling. Baggage Claim said it perfectly. Like, there's no hope anymore. Everybody thinks that the right thing to do and the right story to tell, or the most interesting story to tell, is the most nihilistic story or the saddest story, or things like that. And we forget that part of what makes storytelling beautiful is hope, and the fact that it reminds us of something greater than ourselves. It's a way to disseminate ideas and themes and information and concepts and the human experience. And the human experience is not so bleak as to be without hope. So I don't know. I'm looking forward to being a part of this process. I'm very excited to be able to make interesting new content and get back to what made storytelling great. But I'm also really excited to see other people step into this sphere and make their mark on the world. I do think we're about to hit a creative renaissance, and I think it's going to be really, really, really glorious to watch it happen and watch how technology evolves. Watch how technology evolves storytelling, but also watch how storytelling evolves technology. So yeah.
All right, and to bring it home, to bring us that little tidbit of wisdom that will make this last 2 hours worth it, we have Robert Meyer Burnett.
Well, I too must echo my esteemed colleague and say I'm sorry I was late profusely. I was, because I do the John Campea show today, so I have to drive back. There was no way I could have been here by 1. I'm sorry. I would say this, storytelling has existed since we came out of the trees and wanted to convey what the hunt was like today, how we got this big piece of meat around a campfire, and that's how we told the tales of great victory and great sadness. And so storytelling is not going to go away. The problem is we're going through, I think, a cultural shift where all of us tended to fall in love with movies and television when we were children. Well, now that's not happening. The newer generation, they're not looking outward for stories. They are their stories. They're telling stories about themselves on TikTok, on Instagram Reels, on YouTube. They have become the protagonists. Well, they call it a syndrome, some people do, but I would say no, that we come from a generation that tries to make sense of humanity by looking outward. And that's what storytelling is. It's it's people trying to convey the basic human truths that apply to all of us by telling us stories that are very specific. And I think back to where independent film was in the 80s and say the mid 80s, when Spike Lee first decided, when he wanted to make a movie, to make She's Gotta Have It, which I was a kid in Seattle. I didn't know any black women from Brooklyn, especially ones that had multiple boyfriends at the same time. But when Spike Lee put out She's Gotta Have It, I was blown away by it. It was a slice of life story. It did not have aliens from space trying to destroy anything. It was a story about real characters, real people that I didn't necessarily relate to on a personal level, but I understood them as characters. And I thought that movie was terrific. And 2 movies later, he self-financed that movie. 2 movies later, we got Do the Right Thing. And I think we're right there, because distribution, self-distribution, you can put films out whatever you want, however you want. Theater chains, assuming they don't go away, are going to be begging for content. And it's going to be the same as it always was. Making movies is hard. And when you have a collective group of people, because you need a collective group of people to get together and tell stories, I think we're going to see a repeat of the cycle. We're going to see the new John Cassavetes, come up. We're going to see the new Mike Lees come up, whether people are improvising with their friends, however they're going to do it. During COVID, I just randomly said we should have a film festival on my YouTube channel, and I got 57 submissions that I played from people of all levels of experience and quality, and some of those went on to be festival darlings. But I was amazed at the creativity that was on display, and that was 4 years ago. And with the technology that exists, people have more opportunities than ever to tell stories. The problem is, as always, it's really, really, really hard to make great movies.
Yep.
And there's very few people that can do it. And I fear that people would much rather make a 90-second TikTok video than a 90-minute feature. So we'll see.
Right.
But I'm optimistic. I mean, yeah, okay, so you're not going to be Michael Bay and, have a giant house somewhere in the Hamptons and gaggles of women around you and whatever kind of substances you enjoy in copious amounts. You might not have that. But if you want to be a true storyteller and you want to contribute to this great tapestry of humanity, I think there's never been a better time. We're all carrying around 4K cameras in our pockets. Just get little tripods for them, get some microphones, and start shooting. What's stopping you?
Boom.
Yeah, absolutely. Darmok
Well
at
said.
Jalad and Jalad at Tanagra.
Yep.
Let's do that. Real quick, fast announcements. Then we're gonna do our socials and end this. But we had one final super chat come in from Albert, not a retro, for 5 Canadian again. Mike doesn't want the kingdom, just a successful and entertainment cityscape.
Yeah, just a few vassals and squires. That would make me happy.
Keep your expectations realistic.
Yeah.
And then finally, thank you to our mod, Lord Thoth. You've been great today. Also to Atomic Lori, who's writing, going solo, producing behind the scenes. Thank you so much. Great job today. And with that, I should just let you know that Wednesday on Hollywood on the Rocks, Paul Chatto is going to be joining me. We're going to talk about comedy and the state of comedy today, as well as some other news items. So be sure to join us on Wednesday on Rumble and YouTube. And then Friday, we're going to talk about The Fall Guy, which is why we're starting early, because I'm going to an early screening of that. And we may or may not have a surprise. Let's just say that there might be a surprise, or there might not be a surprise. So tune in on Friday. Real quick, let's go around the horn, give us your socials, and we'll end it there. So Derek, start us off.
That's Derek Anderson, the DA. You can find me on YouTube, Derek B. Writing, on Twitter. Check me out. Thank you so much for bringing me on. Film Threat, always a pleasure.
Absolutely. Mike, go for it.
You can find me on Twitter, _epic_Mike. Find me on YouTube as well. YouTube.com/ or at Epic Mike. Been cruising on there for a while. I'm also on Kick. And then you can catch me on various Geeks and Gamers streams and Epicverse streams. We do an Epicverse stream every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern time. Keep your eyes on epicverse.tv. We're going to have some really cool stuff coming for you down the pike. Been doing a ton of meetings and making a lot of plans and doing a lot of really cool stuff. And when this company is ready to go, you won't hear the end. You won't hear me shut up about it. So I'm really excited. But thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
All right, Baggage Claim.
Hi, I'm Baggage Claim again, and you can find me.
No, you're good. Never mind. You're good.
Okay. I'm Baggage Claim, and you can find me on YouTube, where I make video essays, where I analyze various aspects of our culture, including movies, and try to draw long-lasting lessons out of it. So, and then if you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm at Baggage Claim 11. Wow. So clearly my cat's got my tongue. So thank you. And thank you, all of you gentlemen, for having me on. It was wonderful to stream with all of you.
Thank you. Christian.
Yeah, you can follow me everywhere. I am Hollywood in Toto, TOTO. So at Hollywood in Toto on Twitter. Just search Hollywood in Toto at YouTube. And of course, the Hollywood in Toto podcast.
Yeah. And you have a newsletter too.
Yeah, every Friday it blasts out. I've got I push some of my own stories, but I've got a lot of new stuff in there too. Tips, cool videos, lots of fun stuff. So check out the newsletter. It's new and improved, as they say.
All right, and Script.
Yes, you can follow me on Twitter at ScriptDoctorPhD and on YouTube at youtube.com/ScriptDoctor, where every Saturday I review a screenplay that's been circulating around Hollywood with a special guest host. And I also have a Patreon that allows you to support that show, as well as getting interesting tips and reviews on screenplays and film and television. So thank you so much for having me on with all of you wonderful panelists.
All right, and Robert Meyer Burnett.
You can find me on YouTube at my channel, The Burnett Work. Find me on Instagram at RM Burnett, or find me on Twitter at RMBEEE. And look out for our crowdfunding campaign for True Noir, the Nathan Heller casebooks based on Road to Perdition writer Max Allan Collins' 19-novel series. It's going to be a 10-episode audio drama. I cannot believe the cast that is coming on board this project. I'm very, very excited. I know it's just an audio drama, but you know what? If you're going to be creative, but it's going to be a fully immersive 5.1, maybe Dolby Atmos audio drama. So it's going to be great.
Yeah, let's just
Robert,
say
you're going to make audio. You're going to make audio dramas cool again.
That's what I'm trying to do. That's what I'm trying to do. And we have 19 books to draw from. Wow. And when people start hearing the cast, they're going to be like, wait, what? Yeah.
I'm excited. I've just heard a little bit. I'm Alan Ng, editor-in-chief of Film Threat. Go to filmthreat.com for the latest reviews and news in independent film. Also, join us Monday, Wednesday, Friday on the Film Threat YouTube channel. Also, in a half an hour, I will be interviewing LeVar Burton about Reading Rainbow. So go to the Film Threat interview channel. That interview will be posted in the next day or so. And there we go. So with that, let's get out of here.